You might remember the first mobilization in the Russian army back in 2022. Then many of the Russian men just left the country because they were afraid to be mobilized. So again, Russia lost a huge part of their qualified personnel. And just imagine the pressure on the Russian economy with those disabled, wounded army personnel coming back to Russia. According to the Russian law, they should receive the compensation till the rest of their lives. Some of the good pension, after all, good relative to the other Russian pensions. They require more medical care and they cannot work to maintain the Russian economy. There are almost no jobs for disabled people in Russia. So the destiny for most of those ex-Russian soldiers who lost their health in Ukraine is just to become alcoholics. Yes, the similar stuff is also happening in the other countries, but in Russia it is more dramatic. And Russia doesn't have just 1, 2, 3 people like here with Putin and Shoigu on this picture. No, there are hundreds of thousands. The number is absolutely enormous. You cannot even compare it to any sort of the modern-day war. It is definitely the scale of the World War. Well, probably that is why Russian commanders started to zero their own wounded soldiers, to avoid the scrutiny with medical care and extra load on the Russian budget. But still there is a huge number of Russians who make it out disabled, wounded, but alive. Or in many of the cases, not that alive. But still, even here, the Russian budget is heavily loaded, because here the Russian families, they do not only lose the loved ones, they lose the main economy power of the family. For an average Russian woman with the kids, it's really hard to find a good paid job in Russia. And the compensation for the family loss is simply not enough to raise the kids, for example. And in many of the cases, compensation is not reaching the family. Yes. Russians may say, for example, your husband disappeared. Or they may say, for example, that your husband was intoxicated. That's why he lost his life, so you'll be out of the compensation. Because after all, it's all about the paper, so doctors may write document that the guy was drunk as hell. In that case, definitely the compensation is not provided. And the kids of that particular Russian soldier who lost their life in Ukraine will grow up in very terrible environment. And there is the great probability for them to become drug addicted or criminals.